Welcome to the home of the DIY movement, where we build stuff and paint things.
All right, y'all, it's Way Back Wednesday. Welcome back, man. Where we left off last week was the 85 Limited Regal that I put together because I was going through some withdrawals. And like I said in previous couple videos, I was juggling 2 or 3 cars at the same time, throwing around the idea of moving. And this car was the first one on the chopping block, so it had to go, so I sold it. You guys remember the Way Back Wednesday of the big body? So we got the big body, black, triple black, 94. And then we had the 63 that was that we drove out of town to go get on a rainy night, right? So I ended up selling the big body to a guy in El Paso, and I bought the 63. When I got the 63, the guy wanted to trade the big body back to me for the 63. So I did that. So I got the big body back, and I kept the big body when we moved. Now, when I say when we moved, it was a lot more than just, you know, packing up and moving down the street. I wish I had a lot more pictures of the shop in the build process. I used to have them on a PhotoBucket account, but then PhotoBucket shut down, or they started charging money, and I lost a lot of pictures that I had. But anyways, we moved away from the city, and we basically started, I guess you can say, a new life. We weren't too far away, about an hour away, but you know, I basically kind of left my friends behind. I wouldn't say behind, but you know, we just decided that it was time for us to you know, do our own thing, right? So I had this vision, or this idea, and this is kind of where the DIY movement kind of went into overdrive, right? Went knee deep in it and no turning back, right? Because I moved from the city, I moved away from, you know, all my contacts, which an hour is not out, you know, it's not too far, but you know, if you live in a major city, you know, an hour can turn into 3 hours. So you know, it's just too far to try and get stuff done, and it's sometimes easier and faster just to try and do it yourself, which is how the DIY movement, you know, came to be. Kind of, I guess you can say, was born out of necessity in a way. So to rewind back at the old house we lived in, you know, it was a 1.5 car garage. I had a trailer storage. I had another storage to park the 60 in. So I was paying, like, you know, almost $250, $240, something like that in storage, you know, monthly, which, you know, right now in today's money, you know, that's not a whole lot of money. I mean, it's a good chunk of money, but we're talking 2011, where, you know, that was more money back then, and that's almost 15 years. And you know, so selling the car, I think I sold the trailer, so we cut the storage out. We got money, got more cash flow in our pocket now. So we picked up, you know, a new home, and that was on, you know, what you see in the channel now. And you know, I went back and forth about what I wanted in the shop, right? Originally, I wanted kind of like a big hangout with like a TV and a pool table, and, you know, like a lounge type thing where we can park like 1 or 2 cars. And then I was thinking, well, damn, you know, there's no point in having a lounge if none of my friends are going to come visit me an hour to an hour and a half away where they're at. Like, nobody's going to come hang out, you know. So ditch the pool table idea, you know, ditch the lounge area, and let's just do a shop, you know, a workshop. So I was on the fence about, how do I go about this? I've never done this. I've never lived on such a large lot, which is only an acre, but I've never had a shop built. I know I didn't want to do it myself. I wanted it done professionally because I wanted it to last. Well, who do you hire? How do you pay them? Do you pay them half up front, half when it's done? Do you pay them all up front? Is that standard in the industry, or do you not pay at all? Just so many variables, and there's so many horror stories floating out there about contractors who take your money and don't finish the job, and stuff like that. So I stumbled on a website called Garage Journal, which I think is still active, and I was kind of looking for, I guess, guidance on how do you go about doing this. Do you do it with cash? Do you get a loan for it? Where do you get a loan? Do you do a second mortgage? The members at Garage Journal were really kind of cocky, kind of adamant about if you can't build it with cash, then you can't afford it, and basically shut me down as like, I need like $25,000 at the time, and they said, well, if you can't pay cash, then you can't afford it. Which, that's true, okay, but that statement is not a one size fits all, right? It depends on it. There's a lot of factors, you know what I mean? So what I did basically was I settled on a second mortgage on the house to build the shop, right? It was $25,000 at the time for, I guess, what you can call a turnkey building. You know what I mean? Concrete, 2 doors, what you guys see in the videos, 2 roll-up doors, 2 walk-in doors, concrete, and plumbing, and toilet, and electricity. And that was a lot of dirt work too, man. It was, they hauled a lot of loads of dirt in here to build this place up because it was low, right? So once I pulled the trigger and I applied for the second mortgage on the home, now granted, I had never done that before, right? I had never done that before. I didn't know, really kind of what it meant, until I figured it out. But the note on the second mortgage at the time was only $225. So then I was like, well, shit, man, I was spending more than that between the storage units at the old house. So I'm already used to paying that. So to me, it was like a no-brainer. Like, okay, well, I was already paying like $240 in a single storage plus a trailer, outside trailer storage parking lot, basically. And so now I can build this 30 by 50, 1,500 square feet structure on my property and have plenty of storage for basically the same amount of money. I was like, man, that's a no-brainer. Like, what are these fools on Garage Journal talking about? That if you can't pay cash, you can't afford it. It just didn't make sense to me. So, boom, pulled the trigger, applied for the loan, found a contractor on Facebook, which they're still in business. And, these guys built the shop in like 6 days, six full days, from dirt work to closing the roll-up door and electricity and everything. Took about 6 days, and it's been, the best investment that I've ever done, invested in myself, as far as, I guess real estate or property, because I use it all the time. I don't use it every day, but I definitely use it every weekend, and then some days during the week, but not every day. Anyways, man, when we first had it built, my idea was I wanted to be able to turn a car around and do a U-turn in the shop. And that was what I wanted. And, I can't quite do it. I can do it on skates, on wheel dollies, which, is good enough. But man, when we first moved in and we first had this built, this place was so massive that I was like, man, this is huge. Like I don't need all this space, you know. But in hindsight, you know, what people tell you is build as big as you can afford. I do wish I would have built it bigger because, you know, I've ran out of room. I have enough space to do what I want to do, but if I just had a little bit more, you know, which is the famous last words. But anyways, it's a 30 by 50. I don't believe I've ever talked about the shop on any of my videos, but it's a 30 by 50 with 12-foot walls, and it's a wood frame pole barn, and it's got skylights, so it helps on saving electricity because you get daylight, natural daylight in here. The only regret that I have about the shop is that I wish I would have taken into consideration which way the wind blows. And I've told this to I don't know how many people who ask me what size is the shop, and I just like, man, which way does you got to set it up? Which way does the wind blow? Which way does the breeze blow constantly? And do your roll-up doors that way. That way you're catching a lot of the breeze. Because this picture right here, this back roll-up door, that's where the breeze is at. And you know, it makes the shop really hot when you don't have a breeze blowing through the shop. So that's my only regret. You know, hindsight's 20/20. But man, we built the shop, and you know, we're rolling, right? We're ready. I'm ready for everything that I imagine doing. You know, here's another picture, another angle of when it was built. I had a lot more pictures of all the dirt work and everything, but like I said, they're on Photo Bucket. So anyways, this building right here was actually bigger than the house that we used to live in, which is crazy, which is exactly what I wanted. I told my wife that I wanted a shop bigger than our house, and we did it. And it was only $225, you know, a month, which is, man, that's almost free. You know what I mean? You spend more than that, like in snacks and fast food, you know. So that's the way I looked at it. And like I said, the guys at Garage Journal, man, you know, I don't know what they're thinking, but I mean, some of them still might be thinking that way, which to me is a dumb way of thinking. Like I say, cash is king, but that shoe doesn't fit, you know, all sizes. So I had the shop built, and here's another picture of the car. It's going to be the next shop talk, or next Way Back Wednesday. You know, here's going to be the next Way Back Wednesday. Just a little preview. I'm sure you guys already know about this car. I think I've already done a video on it, but we're going to go ahead and do it just to keep it in sync with the series. It's a 62, is a Rooster. Here's another picture of after it was built, and that's where the restroom is at right now in the shop. But man, I didn't have any type of shelvings or, you know, anything, so everything was on the floor. I had that little workbench there that used to take up so much space in that one car garage, and it's you know, it looks so small sitting there. But I had a little radio, you know, and we basically, I mean, we literally started the shop, you know, from the ground up to bring it up to what you guys see that in the channel. One other regret that I have is that I should have paid the extra $1,500 to get the place insulated at the time that it was built. I dodged out of that, thinking that I didn't need it because I don't know no one really explained it to me. I was like, man, it doesn't really get that cold where we live, you know, like if it's just a month worth of cold, like I can work outside with like hoodies on, you know, like, but the insulation really pays off in the heat. And it's hot a lot, you know. So man, for years I was out here sweating it out, you know. So I finally broke down and had the place spray foamed, which you guys see in the new videos now. I had the whole place spray foam insulated, and it did drop the temperature, you know, more than 10 degrees. It's still hot as hell, but it's not as bad as it used to be. Basically, before the insulation, it was like a damn pizza oven in here, just a sweatshop, you know, like radiant heat from all angles. The insulation did help, the spray foam insulation, and I got it, I believe, closed cell, on the walls and open cell on the roof, on the ceiling. I believe the ceiling is 3 inches thick, and the walls are between 1 and 2 inches of spray foam insulation. And the guy did a real good job. You know, here's another picture when they were done. Everything was brand new and fresh. We didn't have the carport yet. We did have the back porch, which the back porch was the first addition to the house that we did whenever we moved. And I borrowed money for that, actually from my dad, to go ahead and get that done like quickly, like within a month that we lived here, because we needed it. And that was the reason of me selling the black big body, because I borrowed like $7 grand from my dad to get that done. And I ended up selling the big body just so I could pay him off, because I didn't want to, you know, be spending money on cars and stuff while I still owe people. So sold the big body, you know, squared that up with the old man, and you know, I'm ready to go on to the next project. I remember when I sold the Cadillac, my neighbor, who's still there, by the way, a couple lots down, he came over on his horse, and he introduced himself, and I was like, man, let me get on that thing, right? So, you know, I rode the horse around my backyard, and it was the first time ever riding a horse or ever getting on a horse or an animal that big. And you know, I sent the picture to a couple of my friends back then. I said, man, I done sold the lowrider and bought me a horse, right? Like, life changed. So that's a really old picture right there. You know, here's another picture of when the car started getting built, that 62. And like I said, I didn't have any shelving units or anything. We used to work on the floor, man, with that table that right there that I no longer have. But you know, basically started from nothing, man. And you know, shelving units cost money, man. So I used to work on, we built that car laying on the floor like that. No lift, you know, the lift wasn't installed yet. I didn't even have the Quincy air compressor. I had a little Craftsman air compressor. Didn't really have tools. I really didn't know what I was getting into. You know, I really didn't know the tools that it took to do the jobs that you guys see on the channel or build the cars you guys see on the channel. Basically just dove in knee deep, you know, figured it out, you know, by, you know, internet searches, YouTube, and, you know, figured out what I needed to do to get things done that you guys see on the channel. This picture right here is not that old. This picture right here is, I believe, from about 2020. 2019, maybe late 2019, but I included it with this video because it's part of the shop. So when I say that I ran out of space, yes and no. You really can't. I mean, I was painting cars in you know, what I call the big shop, and just making a huge mess, man. Trying to do body work, trying to paint, overspray gets everywhere. And I mean, you know, if you have a car sitting there, like it just makes a big mess. Like, no matter how big the shop is, the overspray is going to find its way in every little nook and cranny. And basically it turns into one big old paint booth or one big old body shop. And I didn't like that. So I had the little addition built in around, like I say, 2019. And it's a 15 wide, 20 foot deep. And I actually, you know, I was like, this is going to be like my little dedicated paint booth, paint room. And it's 20 feet long, right? And, you know, at the time, all the cars that I had done were like in pieces. So I was like, this is plenty big to paint a car on the rotisserie, or, you know, paint a fender or fenders, doors, trunk, whatever. It's plenty big. But I do wish it was like 10 feet longer. That way I could paint a whole car, you know, a whole driving car in that room. And, you know, I didn't learn my lesson the first time. I should have got it about 10 foot longer. But I could still, you know, still do jobs. I still have the big shop, you know, to paint a car if I wanted to. But the little room right there has paid for itself so many times, man, because, you know, you guys see on the channel, you know, we're priming stuff, clearing stuff or whatever in that little room, and it doesn't affect anything in the shop next door. So that was a huge deal. I wish I would have kind of factored that in the first time, but you know, you live and learn. But we're we're coming up here almost on 20 minutes now, and I just wanted to include this video in the Wayback Wednesday series, even though it's not really lowrider or car involved. The shop is a huge part, a huge factor of what takes place on the channel, and I wanted to include that because I get a lot of questions from guys asking about the shop, what size it is, you know, how much did it cost, you know. So hopefully people will find this information useful. My advice is to build as big as you can afford, however big you think it is. Go on and add 10 more feet and figure out which way the wind blows so you get a breeze, and insulate the place. Without a doubt, those three things right there, and you'll be, you know, 7 to 8 years ahead of me, you know, and I had to live through it. So what happened was, with the loan, like I say, I pulled a second mortgage on the home, used the equity that we walked into whenever we bought the home back then. Now the housing market's all out of control, but the car after the Rooster, which we're going to get into with the Wayback Wednesdays coming up here in a couple weeks, I ended up selling that car and paid the loan off. So I only had that loan for maybe 2 years, and boom, done, paid for. So all the guys at Garage Journal that were, you know, kind of dissing the youngster back then, hey man, shit's paid for. And, you know, I enjoy it every weekend, man. So hope you guys enjoyed this Wayback Wednesday, man, talking about the shop. You guys got any questions about the process or whatever, I'll be happy to answer them, man. Y'all stay tuned for more work, and the next Wayback Wednesday is going to be the Black 62.